Hello and welcome and happy Thursday. It's This Is Going Well, I Think, with David Cooper. I'm your host, David Cooper. It's This Is Going Well, I Think. The show where no one's listening. No one cares. The show where I say the same shit at the beginning every goddamn episode. Today, science fiction or science fact. Oh my God, there's so many news shows that have started segments like that. That's so tacky. Science fiction or science fact. Babies in space. That's what we're going to talk about. We're here with CEO and founder of SpaceBorn United. In short, they're trying to do IVF in space to see if we can colonize Mars, expand our space travel into the galaxy. It is a private organization. I'm trying to get a straight answer from this guy whether sex in space is possible. His name is Dr. Egbert Edelbroek. And let's find out if he's able to make babies in space.
Hi there.
Hi there. Egbert, is it?
Yes, it's Egbert from the Netherlands.
Egbert Edelbroek.
Yes.
Okay, I got it. My producer Danny was really worried I'd pronounce your name wrong.
Oh, well, in Dutch it would be Edelbroek, but I'm not going to ask that from you.
That seems easier than Edelbroek, which is what she told me. Edelbroek.
Okay. Let's do Edelbroek then.
Edelbroek. Broek. Okay. Are you in where are you in the Netherlands?
In the south, in the city of Eindhoven.
Okay.
It's a little bit known for Philips Electronics.
I've heard of them. I think I have a shaver from them.
Yeah. So
I've been to Amsterdam. I've been to Gouda. I have a friend who lives in
Gouda cheese.
Or as we North Americans say, Gouda.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited to talk to you. I'm rolling right now, by the way. I don't want to surprise you on that.
Happy to be on your podcast.
Because I don't know, sometimes I have a background in science. I mean, it's computer science, the lowest form. But I studied physics when I was in school, and I'm fascinated by, space, I guess I'm not the first one to be fascinated by it. But because I like to get silly sometimes, I've done stories about sex in space. And as far as I know, all the major space agencies like Russia, the United States, they all say they've never tried it. They don't know if it works, but they're kind of cagey about it. So maybe they have tried it. But look, if we want to travel to distant planets, solar systems, across the galaxy, unless we figure out a way to beat physics as we know it, it's going to take a long time. So to get there, the way I see it, and it doesn't mean there isn't another option, we've got intergenerational space travel where we have kids and kids and kids, and by the who knows what number generation we arrive at the distant planet. Or we have some sort of sci-fi style stasis, cryogenics. Mm-hmm. With current science that's, kooky stuff. People who claim to know about that and claim to have success with that, they haven't. But one thing we know we can do is have kids, right? We can have babies, some of us at least.
Yeah, I mean, there's you have the natural reproduction by having sex, but there's also assisted reproduction without sex. So, like IVF, in vitro fertilization, that happens on Earth on a daily basis in almost all countries, and yeah, we can take that to space. We are taking it to space. Because it would be a little bit unethical, a lot unethical to have people reproduce in a natural way in space at the moment.
Why unethical? It's just space agencies don't allow for it, or you can't really force people to do that, or what are the ethics with that?
It's not the technically, physically, it's possible. There are some minor obstacles, but we can overcome them. It's about the health of the embryo. Embryos are designed to experience a certain level of gravity like we experience on Earth. And if you take that away, if you change that too much, you get a lot of negative health implications. And so also there is the radiation, which is much higher than on Earth. In space, you don't have the 10-kilometer atmosphere that protects for a lot of the radiation. So those are key problems for reproduction in space in a natural way.
So that's an overview of the problem, and then we enter you. You're the CEO and founder of SpaceBorn United. Let's take a step back. How do you become first interested in this problem?
Yeah, well, part of that is because I am a donor, a sperm donor for an IVF clinic. And in that role, I learned more about this technology, this IVF technology, this assisted reproductive technologies. And there I combined this new knowledge with my own passion for space exploration. And I was getting more and more curious if we could perhaps re-engineer this existing technology to also make it work in space. Because as you mentioned, we need to address this if we want to become multiplanetary. And apparently all space agencies do, they want to, and we support this goal. So my curiosity translated into talking about this with experts from the space sector and the medical sector and the ethical experts, etc. And everybody was like, hey, can I join? Can I join? This is important. And I was initially thinking, well, doesn't make sense. This is so big. NASA is doing this, or ESA, or one of the other agencies, or Elon Musk, but they don't. And there's clear reasons why it's very difficult for them. And so that's where it started some 6 years ago.
How do you get funding for this? It goes from, most people will think this is kind of a wild idea. You're a little bit ahead of your time. We haven't even gotten people to Mars yet, which takes 6 months. How do you go around securing funding to start something like this?
Yeah, so initially we depend on angel investment. I also invested a little bit myself, but there's another business case. Not our very long-term goal is enable human reproduction in space, but on a more short term, there is very interesting opportunities for the fertility sector, like IVF clinics and related organizations. Because what we will be doing in space very soon, our experts, our IVF and space experts, have very high expectations that this will be translatable to improve IVF on Earth significantly. So the IVF success rate on Earth, they're stagnant all over the place, and the sector is really a little bit frustrated. So they're really eager to find new ways to further improve those success rates. And yeah, we can explain why what we will do will improve it a lot.
Okay, well, let's talk about the current experiment that you want to conduct. The ethics around it, the expected outcomes. What exactly do you plan on doing?
Yeah, so it's a step-by-step approach. We cannot start with human embryos or human reproductive cells. You always start with animal cells. So the first experiment will be with mouse sperm cells and female cells, and we will do a full IVF cycle in space. That means the fertilization happens in low Earth orbit. Inside an unmanned mini lab. So it's like a small shoebox size mini lab.
Wow.
In which the magic happens. That's where the sperm cells will fertilize the female cells, grow into an embryo, and develop for about 5 days. And then we are monitoring that with micro cameras and live streams to Earth, so we can monitor all these embryos being born, being conceived. And developing.
What's inside the box? Is it a little robotic arm? How are you actually performing the experiments unmanned in a small box?
Yes, so it's existing IVF technology, but miniaturized,
okay,
and optimized for application in space. And we use, for example, a rotating disc, a microfluidic disc with all small channels. I have a prototype in front of me here.
Yeah, it's cool.
And there are some rooms on the outer edges of some chambers, and inside those chambers, the embryos will conceive. And by rotating the disc, they will experience a gravity level. And by changing the rotation speed, we can adjust it to any gravity level that we want to study. For example, the gravity on Mars, which is a lot less than on Earth. And in that way, we can study embryo development in the Mars gravity environment, but close to Earth, affordably, and then learn if the Mars gravity will be sufficient for healthy reproduction, healthy embryo development.
What if you find that gravity is completely essential to make something like this viable, that if you try it in space for whatever reason it doesn't work out? What are you expecting the outcome to be? Or like a true scientist, though the best you can say right now is we don't know.
Well, because we don't know, we are studying it, and we need to. There's a lot known about microgravity when you're just in the International Space Station, just in orbit, orbiting Earth, not experiencing real gravity. But our embryos will be experiencing gravity because we will be rotating that disk. We don't know if Mars gravity will be enough. It needs to be a little bit more. And that will not be a showstopper for reproduction on Mars. It could mean that, okay, the Martian gravity level is just not enough, should be a little bit more. And then they can start designing interventions like even rotating bedroom areas where pregnant women need to spend the night for 7 or 8 hours to compensate for the lower gravity during the day. That could just be the solution. So this is not, it will not result in a showstopper, but in crucial input needed for designing interventions to compensate.
So what's next after this experiment, assuming it's a success or you learn what you're expecting to learn?
Yeah, so if it's successful and we study the health of the embryos, we place the embryos back in the natural womb of the mouse, and we study the pups, and we study the reproductive process of the newborn mice, and we prove that everything is good and healthy. Then we can gradually transition to do the same with human embryos and human sperm cells and female cells.
So dreaming big, where do you hope to see your company? Where do you hope to see human space travel in, let's say, 200, 300 years? In the distant future, where do you see us? Do you see us colonizing other planets? Do you see us just sort of setting up a base on Mars? Where do you see a long-term outcome after our lifetime from this technology?
Yeah, I think technological developments are exponential these days.
Yes,
especially in the medical field and artificial intelligence, etc. So it's pretty.
Don't get me started on the tech singularity.
So it's difficult to predict so far ahead, but we will certainly. If you ask me, it makes a lot of sense. There's so many benefits for becoming a multiplanetary species. So we will certainly have an independent human settlement on Mars with a couple of million people probably. We might, really like 200 years and further, we should have settled on other planets in our Venus. I think should be. Mars could be terraformed a lot more than in a few decades. So we might be able to live on the surface of Mars. And there's plants and trees and jungles and cities, and that should be possible. I think that's a realistic scenario for at least for Mars. Depending on the technology and the rocket propulsion technology, we might be traveling to other solar systems. And the things you mentioned, cryogenic frozen embryos, seed ships, sending them to other planets. That might happen.
Well, I was talking about cryogenics for existing humans, but I guess it's very much possible that you send an automated ship with the embryos, and then as they approach their destination, they're fertilized, something like this.
Those concepts are very seriously studied by several universities and the space sector. And NASA and ESA, they are also seriously studying scenarios for human hibernation. That's not freezing, but it's a nice step in between.
What do you say to those people who, and I'm not one of them at all, I find this stuff very exciting. Me and my ex-wife used to fight because I said, if I have the option to colonize Mars, I'm going. It was a joke, of course. But there are people who will look at technology like this, people working in this space, and say, our efforts should be directed at cleaning up the Earth we have here rather than terraforming a planet. I don't think these things are mutually exclusive. But what do you say do you get critics like that?
Yeah, it's a legitimate concern, and of course we shouldn't focus a lot on like a plan B, and if, allow for the further destruction of Earth. Of course, 99.9% of all our talents and efforts and money and resources should be focused on keeping Earth habitable and healthy, etc. But there are some risks that we might not be able to control, and therefore it's wise to have a plan B. But let's focus on plan A with almost everybody, of course.
I saw that documentary Armageddon. I've seen what can happen. I'm kidding, of course, not a documentary, but we could do every effort to restore the Earth in the next 100 years to make it perfect again. Stop global warming, stop all these things, well, climate change. And then an asteroid could just come hit us and we'd be toast. So these things aren't a bad idea, even though the Earth is, by some people's opinion, burning right now.
Absolutely. So yeah, it's good to have these discussions and to embrace critics and dialogues about it. It's very important.
Will there be a public experiment, do you think, where people actually have sex in space? I am deeply curious about this.
Oh, absolutely. The space tourism sector is now emerging and accelerating, and that will be a strong magnet for couples that will want to be in the history books, or the very first naturally conceived baby in space. That's very attractive, even for upcoming space nations to send couples. But because that's ethically not yet safe to do, not responsible to do, yeah, we should first wait until we have space stations with rotating wheels that provide enough gravity. And if we solve some of the radiation issues some more, then it might be ethically acceptable.
How do you feel about the privatization of space travel? When I was a kid, it was all NASA, it was all government run. Now I see things moving faster, but sometimes maybe a little less ethically or a little bit more containing the ugly parts of capitalism. Do you think the privatization of space travel, especially here in the US, do you think it's a good thing, a bad thing, or a mixed thing?
Absolutely. It's a very good thing. And it's very good that the NASA was decided to embrace this and to allow for this, because it's the benefits of both approaches. I mean, it's very difficult for agencies to spend taxpayer money on ethically complex topics like life science, space life science, especially reproduction. So that gives us a reason to exist, and the private sector can address other challenges than agencies can. So the combination is ideal. I mean, you need large budgets, country kind of budgets for all the work we need to do. Therefore, we need agencies, but we also need more innovative power, a fail fast approach. I mean, what Elon Musk can do, agencies cannot do. They cannot have all these exploding self-landing rockets before they actually work well. But we need to innovate fast, and that can be done much more easier with the private sector.
Okay, well, I wish it wasn't Elon Musk. I'm not the hugest fan of him, but I don't hate SpaceX, so, here and there. Is there anything else you wanted to cover? I mean, this is all fascinating stuff.
Yeah, maybe people would be interested in knowing that we expect to have the very first human embryo in history that is conceived in space in just 5 to 6 years.
Wow.
And then there's another small step to be allowed to place back such a healthy embryo in the natural womb. And then we will have the very first human baby, the human child that was not conceived on Earth. We expect to enable this within this decade.
Wow. And so you would fertilize that and then bring it back to Earth, or you would carry the baby to term out there?
No, absolutely not. Carrying it to term, it would be super irresponsible. It's the conception, the first 5 days of embryo development, and then returning back to Earth and the rest of the pregnancy and giving birth on Earth.
When do you expect we could have our first space baby, as it were?
And do you mean space baby, a baby just born in space?
Sure. Sorry. A baby where the full pregnancy, the full term of it, and the birth is given in space as well.
We expect that should be possible in about 3 decades. Yeah, we know that's ambitious, but yeah, let's start with an ambitious plan and see how fast we can do it in an ethically sound way. Obviously,
Start with the rodents. We'll take it from there.
absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you for your time, Dr. Egbert Edelbroek. No, not even close.
Yeah, it was very close.
Oh,
That's how you pronounce my name.
good.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on your show. So
Yeah, it was a pleasure having you here. This was fun and informative and fascinating. And thanks for your time and good luck with the experiment.
thanks. I'll keep you updated.